One of the things that you need to do in an interdisciplinary area is to learn each other's language, to be open to these unusual sort of turns in the road, and to sort of seize those opportunities. Although it sounded like it seemed at some time like this is a failure, but it wasn't. The innovation is happening at the boundaries of disciplines, at the boundaries of interactions. We're no longer really dealing with just a small aspect of a problem. Think about the grand challenges that are facing us. The energy transition, the climate transition. These are systemic problems. And to make a dent in these big problems, then you have to really think about it from a system perspective, where again you go back into this notion of the depth, saying that your disciplinary expertise is very important in addressing a specific aspect of the problem, but you have to be able to look at the whole system.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. As we like to think, this is your future simplified. Today's podcast is brought to you by IIT Madras Global, an initiative of the Office of Global Engagement at IIT Madras. IITM Global is a platform that helps IIT Madras and India take its thinking, its research, teaching, and philosophy broadly to the world audience. Learn more about their efforts in the links in the description below. Education is undergoing an upheaval. The systems of education, as we know, colleges, universities, students, professors, is a paradigm that has lasted for several thousand years, but it's now under stress, so to say. It's seeing a change, a phase of change. Interdisciplinarity, where old boundaries between disciplines are fast coming down. To help us understand how students should think of their careers in this fast changing world, I have a fascinating guest on our podcast today, Professor Vinod Subramaniam,
Thank you for having me.
President of the University of Twente in the Netherlands. University of Twente is one of the top technical universities in the Netherlands, and he himself has reinvented himself in multiple avatars, starting from a degree at Cornell. So let's start where you began, Vinod, and your education and what led you to biophysics in particular.
So that's actually quite a journey, Mahesh. Thank you again for having me here and for the opportunity to actually be a part of the Professor Mahesh podcast. I've actually listened to this with great interest, not only this past few weeks that I've been here in Chennai, but also earlier I'd come across a couple of these things and think that the idea of reaching out to our young people is so important because they are the future. It's not us.
Thank you.
So my journey, I sometimes characterize it as a drunken man's wandering. It's a random walk almost. So I grew up in Delhi and actually started at the IIT Delhi on a BTech in civil engineering, but I'd already gotten admission and a scholarship to Cornell University. But that was 1985, and you know how it was. Visas were not exactly easy to come by, but it did happen. And so I left very quickly, and I went off to Cornell to study what was then, as it seems to be now, the field of interest that attracts all people, which is computer science. And it took me all of, I think, 3 months to realize when I got there that this was not what I wanted to do. And that comes back to, I think, to the topic of our conversation today. So I ended up actually at that time realizing after my first programming course that this really didn't float my boat. So, and I sort of got into this mode of thinking of saying, what do you do now? So I ended up in electrical engineering. And the reason I did electrical engineering was not because it was the default option, but because at Cornell, that was a time of lasers and where, the main sort of advances that were being made in new laser technology, femtosecond laser technology and color center lasers was actually in the electrical engineering department. And there was a professor there called Cliff Pollock, who actually was a very inspiring man. And I felt I really wanted to work together with him. And this is the other thing that happens when you come into a university setting, is that you get inspired by people. You get inspired by teachers. And you say, wow, I want to be like him or her. And this is what happened. And I got sucked into this optical sciences business. And so it was almost by default that I ended up being in electrical engineering. I got a degree in electrical engineering. I take pride in telling people that I almost also got a degree in archaeology. Because, speaking of interdisciplinarity, I mean, I had the opportunity at Cornell. We had to, as first-year students, to take courses outside our field and outside the School of Engineering. So I had to take so-called freshman seminar, and I came into I came into contact with art history and archaeology, and I got a chance to do some of that work. And after my first year, I actually got to go on a field trip in Europe. I was 18 years old, and I was going off and doing archaeological digging. So this was great. But anyway, I didn't do that. I ended up ultimately getting a degree in electrical engineering, and then going on to graduate school at the University of Michigan. And at the University of Michigan, I was going to do the traditional electrical engineering, but they were starting a new program called applied physics. And when I went to visit the University of Michigan, I met a very inspiring professor, Duncan Steele, who ended up being my graduate advisor, who says, look, you shouldn't be going to, he was joint appointed in electrical engineering, so I got to see him, but he said, no, you need to go into applied physics, although you're not a physicist, because I think this marriage of things that you're looking at doing, lasers and semiconductors and so on, this is where you should be. It was again an accident, a circumstance, and that's what happened. And a few years into that journey, I realized that I wasn't actually very happy doing, shooting lasers at semiconductors. And Duncan was, but he was a fantastic human being, and I wanted to continue to work with him. And this notion of interdisciplinarity was actually very much manifested in him. He was one of the first, I think, what I call one of the pioneers of interdisciplinarity. He had another lab. He had a lab in the so-called Institute of Gerontology. You would never think an electrical engineer would end up in an Institute of Gerontology, where he was working together with a biochemist, a chap called Ari Gaffney, who was another fantastic individual. And what they were trying to do was actually understand how proteins are folding and misfolding using laser technology. So I had the chance actually to just sort of transfer my work with Duncan from electrical engineering to this Institute of Gerontology, where I ended up actually working on a biophysical problem. And in 2 years, I'd gotten my degree. Yeah? And so for a lot of our young people who seem to think that there is a well thought out path, that's not how it works usually in life. Yeah? And maybe you should, what I learned from that whole process was, of course, was to be open to these unusual sort of turns in the road, and to sort of seize those opportunities. Although it sounded like it seemed at some time like this is a failure, but it wasn't. In fact, I came home to roost, if you will.
I think you make an important point that you have to first give yourself a chance to be hit with these unlikely events for turns. And second, you should be open to embracing one of those turns, right? How would a student navigate, a turn? How would I know it's a turn worth making?
it's a tough call, and I understand that, you don't know that right away. But I think you have to, first of all, for me, I navigate a lot by my gut. Does it feel good? Does it seem right? Is this really interesting? Is this a fascinating subject? Yeah.
Hmm.
And you need to have some mentors and who you look up to, and you say, hey, wait a minute, this is cutting edge stuff. I mean, it's not, when you think about it, I mean, from a classical perspective, I mean, if I had stayed looking at quantum wells, and which is what I was doing, I mean, that would have been just fine.
Right.
Yeah. But I realized that here was something that was happening where, they were developing a new language. Yeah. And they were learning each other's language. And I used the word language actually very, very important, because I think one of the things that you need to do in an interdisciplinary area is to learn each other's language.
Hmm.
Yeah. What I realized was that, I came in with a certain engineering and physics background, but I really had to learn the language of biochemistry and the language of chemistry.
Sure.
And the investment that I made in learning that language has proved to be really absolutely one of the best things that I could do.
Hmm.
And in the same way, I in my career, I also, after the US, I ended up going to Germany. I literally invested in learning the German language.
Hmm.
And then I moved on to the Netherlands, and I invested in learning the Dutch language. Both have been investments that were absolutely worth it. I would never be where I am right now, in the positions that I am right now, if I hadn't learned the languages. Yeah. Partly because I think it's so important to integrate within the society that you're in.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think it really makes you part of that part of the culture, and it makes you understand what's really going on. Otherwise, you remain forever the outsider.
Sure. Let's get a little semantic distinction out of the way right up front. People talk multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. Okay, so let's parse the two and ask, what do you think your definition of multidisciplinary education or research versus interdisciplinary?
Yeah, so I think this is it's a very important question. It's also one that you could spend a lot of time talking about and not really getting anywhere. And this is what I think happens a lot in our dialogues. I think what you see is, when you talk about multidisciplinarity, is you're marrying different traditions, different disciplines together. Yeah? That's important. What is interdisciplinary is again, the definitions that I have come across have varied quite a bit. What I try to think about in terms of thinking about students is, and we're thinking about sort of the T-shaped professional. You've heard of that, the pie-shaped professional. What you want is a certain level of depth in a particular area, and whether it's in your field, which is mechanics, fluid mechanics, or if it's in some kind of traditional disciplinary area, that's okay. That gives you the depth. But what you also need is sufficient, I think, breadth and sufficient openness to the other areas, saying, hey, look, how can I apply my knowledge, where I have deep domain knowledge, to a problem that may be coming from a different area. Yeah. So for me, I don't really think so much about whether I myself or an individual is multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. I just sort of think about, okay, what are the things that you're trying to get for a student? What do you need to know? And what do you need to be able to do? So there's a question of knowledge, and there's also a question of skills. Yeah? And so those are the things that we are trying to combine and trying to sort of develop. I think one of the questions that you were asking was, how do you make sure that you're not jack of all trades and master of none?
Correct.
Yeah. that's a pitfall that one has to worry about. Yeah. So I think you need to develop that depth aspect as well. But I think the danger in developing depth in just one dimension is that you've lost then the ability to be inspired by questions that are coming from elsewhere. And that could be another discipline, but it could also be society. Yeah, I know. I mean, one of your passions has been, sort of the translation of knowledge to applications, to sort of startups and so on. Most of that time, from our academic perspective, we have lots of ideas, and translating that into actually a viable product very often has to deal with what is the question that somebody is asking.
Sure.
What does small, medium industry need? What does the company need? What does society need? And what I keep telling my folks, students and elsewhere, I say, hey, be inspired by the questions that are out there. And it'll follow as the night the day, to quote Shakespeare, that you can apply your knowledge in that particular question.
And to be able to apply that knowledge, like I think it comes back to the earlier point you made, you need to embrace the language of that discipline. You were talking of, actual languages, but disciplines have their own language.
Disciplines have their own language. And, in my own field, in my own research area, which is biophysics, I had to learn 2 different languages,
Yeah.
I had to learn the language of, I had the language of the laser physics, for example, yeah, and the fluorescence and all of that. But I had to learn the language of the biology and then to say, okay, I'm not just sort of saying, well, this is a black box that I'm going to shoot at, but no, this is a protein and it does this and these are the things that we have to worry about. That means you need to learn that language in a very substantial way.
Okay, let's look at the evolution of higher education broadly. You've seen education in the US. You're a product of the Indian education system, and you've kept a close touch with India and Europe now, where you've been a contributor as a leader. Tell us a little bit about how, from your perspective, has education evolved in the last 4 decades that you've been observing this system?
I'm really seeing a huge shift from the disciplinary approach to things to more the multidisciplinary, as you were talking about, saying, okay, hey, problems are becoming more and more complex. Yeah, and I think it's something that the IITs have been thinking about for a long time, saying system thinking. We're no longer really dealing with just a small aspect of a problem. You have to think about the whole system. Think about the grand challenges that are facing us, the energy transition, the climate transition. These are systemic problems. And to make a dent in these big problems, then you have to really think about it from a system perspective, where again, you go back into this notion of the depth, saying that your disciplinary expertise is very important in addressing a specific aspect of the problem, but you have to be able to look at the whole system. Yeah. So I think one of the things that I am seeing very much so is that more and more the value of system thinking, more and more the value of design thinking, and about really saying, okay, how do you zoom out and look at the big picture and go back into that? And then the ability to zoom back in and to go into depth in certain aspects of that. That's changing. Those are the things that I'm seeing also employers asking. They want both. And this is the tricky part, is that they want the system thinking aspect, but they also want the expertise. Yeah, that says, okay, I can ask you to do a specific problem on a mechatronics thing or a robotics or haptics, whatever it is. Yeah? So you need to have the expertise in that bit as well. Yeah? The other thing I'm seeing is that what I'm particularly seeing with large companies and which are dealing with very complex systems such as ASML that we were talking about, they want people who can work together in teams.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are not just teams of multidisciplinary people, from across disciplines. It's also across education levels. Because when you think about, a machine that ASML makes, the thing costs 300 million euros or whatever. It's not just PhD level engineers who are building that. You're talking about, the scientists. You're talking about PhD level engineers. You're talking about folks who are BTech. Yeah, or you're talking about folks who are vocational training. Yeah, so you have to be in a team. You're going to have a vast diversity of backgrounds, disciplinary backgrounds, but also levels of education, and you have to be able to contribute within that team. And those are things that we find very, very important. And so what we're seeing in our own educational approach at the university is we're looking at things like challenge-based learning. So we try to make teams of students, 4, 5, 6, sometimes smaller, who address a problem together. It comes with all sorts of challenges, of course. How do you evaluate individual performance versus group performance? But what you are inculcating are aspects of collaborative behavior, which is becoming exceedingly important in these complex systemic problems. It's no longer just an individual contribution. I'm not at all trying to negate the individual contribution aspects of it, because that's always going to be there. But the collaborative and sort of coherent collaborative interaction within a team is becoming more and more important. Yeah. And that's not something that we traditionally do at universities.
Or teach well. One area where I've found, at least at IIT, students learn that skill is in student tech clubs.
Absolutely.
Right? But it still doesn't cut across education levels.
So, I have a solar car team, which is sitting in Australia right now.
Yeah.
And they will be starting the Bridgestone Challenge next week. That's a perfect example. So this solar team, Twente, this is composed of kids from the university, kids from the University of Applied Sciences in Enschede, Saxion, and the regional ROC, which is sort of the more vocational college. Without all three contributions, we could not succeed.
Yeah. That car wouldn't run
That car would not run. Look, you need people to design the aerodynamics of it. You need people to actually build the engineering. You need people to actually put the stuff together, And so you see it. Really, that is a living manifestation of this sort of team, which can only work across levels, across disciplines.
So you have the formal education that happens in the classroom, and the more informal education that happens in clubs like this.
Right.
Tomorrow's successful student should have both
both.
of degrees of education under their belt.
You need both. And what I tell the students is learn to, when you're at the university, it's a safe place for you to actually try to learn to make these sorts of contacts, because once you get into a job, you don't get to choose your team. You get dropped into a situation, and you have to make the best of it.
I think a quick message to the parents out there that say, don't waste your time in tech clubs. Just focus on your studies. Get a good GP.
Absolutely spend time on the tech clubs. Yeah.
Yes, I would strongly urge students and parents as well to absorb the benefits of being in a different learning environment.
Yeah.
You have yourself championed this idea of interdisciplinary education at the University of Twente with the TechMed Centre.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the TechMed Centre and tell us what we can learn from that effort.
So the TechMed Centre actually started out, it's the successor of an institute called the Mira Institute for Biomedical Technology and Technical Medicine. What it was about 25 years ago, there was a couple of pioneers who really thought we needed a new education. We saw that healthcare was changing, and that healthcare was going to be dramatically influenced by technology. And that meant that you actually need a new medical professionals. And you see that now in all of our medical in hospitals. The use of technology is just absolutely exploding. But not all medical professionals are actually capable of using all of the technology or understanding the technology. So there was a clear room for individuals, for students, for a professional who had both things, who really married both the medical and the technological aspects. So we started out to start this program, technical medicine. In Dutch, it's called technische geneeskunde, so technical medicine, and it has taken us a good 2 decades to really get it completely off the ground and into flight mode. But so successful that we have collaborations with every university medical center, with a bunch of hospitals, peripheral hospitals, we call it, large hospitals in the region. And this profession is now got a certification. Yeah? So we've actually been pioneers in starting a completely new profession within the Netherlands, within the healthcare space. Yeah. And these folks have gone out to do wonderful things, So they're
How
out
many
there.
classes have graduated?
So we are now, we're 25 years. So we
So
have about
over 20 some
20 some classes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
and we have a whole association for technical medicine, etc. And these folks are going out and doing wonderful things in the hospitals, but they're also finding other things to do. I mean, they're also in business. They're in pharmaceutical companies. They're working for places like companies like Siemens or Medtronics, and what they're able to do is to provide this bridge between the hardcore technology and the medicine, because here again they're speaking both languages. They're speaking both the technology language as well as the medical language, so they're able to really make that bridge. Yeah. And so what we're doing also from the TechMed Centre, which is sort of the research institute that's associated with it, is we're also building these bridges with other medical centers. So we have a close collaboration with the Radboud University in Nijmegen and Radboud University Medical Center. We call it the Nexus. So it's a combination between the university and the medical center. Well, what we're trying to do is to identify the areas where technology is going to play a very important role in next-gen healthcare, and then try to do things together. Going back to this issue of collaboration, because I think it's an illusion to think that we can find solutions to the big problems of our times alone. You're going to have to do it together, and you have to do it with the individual expertises, managing the individual expertises. But you need the folks in between who are able to make those bridges, who can build those bridges. And that's what TechMed is doing. Yeah? It's really fascinating to see, because I was visiting Canada earlier in the year. We have a partner in Waterloo. And they're doing the same sorts of things. They're trying to bring their healthcare together and interact with the engineering school, with other faculties, and this notion of really trying to find next level solutions with bringing different expertises together is really very, very powerful. Yeah? And I think one of the things that we as engineering institutions should not also, there's a trap you can fall into, which is what I call technology optimism, saying that technology is the solution to every problem. That's not the case. We saw that in COVID as well.
Yeah,
we were able to create the vaccines in no time at all. So if you think about it, scientifically, this is a fantastic breakthrough. But the problem ended up being, certainly in the Western world, was more a behavioral issue.
Yeah.
How do you convince people that it's safe to take these vaccines? Yeah. So I think as techies, we have the the inclinations sometimes to say, you know what, we've got the tech solution and that's it.
Yeah.
That tech is useless if people don't adopt it.
Yeah. I think one of the takeaways for me from the way you've designed the TechMed curriculum is to bring two seemingly unrelated bodies of knowledge into one individual. Now, the old tendency would have been, let's say, a large healthcare company needs different stripes of expertise. They would hire an MD, PhD. They would also hire a PhD in engineering and have them work in teams. But to have both bodies of knowledge in one individual is that to collaboration on steroids taken to the very next level.
It is. And the thing that I want to say is that the first model you're talking about, where you hire the MD, PhD and a PhD in engineering, you should do that anyway. These people who are being trained in a different way, they add something else to the mix. Yeah. I don't want to say that the TechMed person is going to replace the others. They're not, because I mean they are complementary and they're very, very useful because the MD PhD has certain depth in certain skills and the engineering PhD has certain depth in certain skills. What the TechMed person can do is really sort of play a very important role in bridging the two worlds.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I think what we've done is actually we've added another dimension, and that's been very valuable. Yeah, it's not a replacement per se of one or the other. It's really adding something else to the mix, and that makes it a much more powerful combination.
I think therein also lies a message for our medical student community. We have our MBBS, that's the starter medical program, and then several students go on to do MD, DM, etc. While doing MBBS, there is almost no math in their curriculum, zero math for sure, and almost no technology grounding. I think the future doctor will find it rewarding to adopt some aspects of a TechMed curriculum and engineer something for himself or herself while still doing medicine.
Yeah, and I was reading something else. I think I was listening to a podcast with Director Kamakoti, where he was talking about these online courses that you're also providing.
Yes.
I mean, those are COVID was a transformational event in many different ways, negative and positive. And the positive aspect of it is actually this sort of online access to knowledge that was essentially done overnight in a week, and I think those are things that we can leverage in terms of saying, okay, look, we've got these courses, we've got MOOCs, we've got specific things that an MBBS student can also
I think
follow.
And there are also MOOCs at different levels.
At
You can
different
start
levels,
with basic high school math
Mhm.
and work your way up to an advanced ML model,
Absolutely.
learning ML
Yeah.
models, through a series of fairly manageable bite-sized steps.
Absolutely.
I think that's an advice we should leave our MBBS students with.
Certainly.
I think along the way, we also find faculty and the role of faculty sort of as enablers of this model of education to be somewhat lacking. So what would we tell faculty to sort of pass on in the classroom?
So Mahesh, this actually is actually one of the great challenges. I mean, you're an educational leader yourself, and you've seen it. What you typically see is that we mostly don't need to convince our kids. They're more or less ready to try new things. I don't usually need to work very hard to convince senior management. But senior professors can be a very, very tough nut to crack, because they say, hey, wait a minute, I'm a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, and I learned things in this way, and I was taught in such a way, and I have certain very clear sort of ideas about how the material needs to be taught and so on. But our world is changing. And our world is really changing faster than we could have even ever imagined. And that's where I find that I need to really spend a lot of time is actually in that dialogue with the faculty in terms of saying, hey, how do we move ourselves to the next level? How do we make sure that we don't get left behind because we are unwilling to test the waters or so.
Sure.
And that's something where, of course, in an educational institution like this, the faculty are actually key. But what is also very heartening to see at most institutions is that there's also a whole bunch of folks who are trying new things and who want to say, look, I want to combine new aspects of into education, whether it's certain types of practical work or artificial intelligence or some kind of machine learning or statistics. So those are things that a lot of options are becoming open to us now with all of the advances, but you have to see if you can actually translate that into a scalable and usable approach within education.
Sure. That scalability is, I think, what, to be fair to faculty, is what worries them.
I totally understand that.
Yeah. So maybe like even something as simple as grading interdisciplinary courses, projects.
How do you do that?
Oh yeah. So there's a challenge there.
It's
real
a challenge. No, but it's a real challenge, and I really don't want to negate that. Yeah? How do you measure these things? What metrics do you use? Yeah. But I think one of the things that I have found is valuable, and I'm sure you found that also as from the incubation cell. You need to talk, for example, to the folks who are taking up. So what I say is, let's talk to our partners in industry. What are they looking for? Yeah, because what you don't want to do as an institution is that you're delivering students with a certain level of knowledge and expertise, only to find that they're being retrained when they go into into companies. Because they say, well, you learned stuff, but it's not quite what I want.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that happens here. I see that happening.
It happens a lot here in India as well. And there's a mismatch of timescales, industry timescales.
Timescales it's the big issue.
I think. We'll maybe come back to that. Let's switch gears and talk about what technology itself is doing to our business, the business of delivering education, right? When Google search came along, I remember we were all amazed at how much information was actually just freely available. And now, over the 2 decades of Google searching, there's so much more content that has gotten added on. And now then came ChatGPT, and now you have other trained models. What is this doing to education itself? What is the role of a university? What is the role of a professor in your mind?
So this is the next big wrenching change that is happening. One of the things that I'm seeing myself in how people are using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT models, any large language model is. Speaking for ourselves as an institution, we're very much in we're still in an exploratory mode. We're just looking at it and saying, well, how do you do this? You cannot ban it.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
All right. So you can't control the usage of this. But what you can do is probably teach people how to use it effectively. And I use the word effectively because there's efficient usage and there's effective usage. And what I see is that if you look at the output from one of these AI models and you read through it, it seems very, very, very believable, plausible, until you hit upon a hallucination or something and you say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I've seen that more often than once. So I think the challenge is going to actually be in teaching people how to sift and to evaluate that information. You can't prevent them from using it, but you have to somehow build in, these are the things that we've been doing as engineering institutions or as universities in any case, which is to teach our students, analytical skills, critical thinking. And that means you have to apply that critical thinking and analysis also to the output of your LLM model.
Yeah.
You cannot just take it at face value.
Yeah.
That's what's happening too often, right?
So a professor in a classroom, I think what I'm hearing you say, their main job is to teach the students that discrimination ability.
Question. Right? Question what you are getting. Which is what we've always said, you get a textbook. The fact that it's in a textbook doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% right. Question it, check it out, and establish it for yourself. And I think you're going to need to do that with the ChatGPT outputs as well.
But it's also got a lot of positives. Let's talk about the positives of what it can do to a future engineer. A future engineer in their engineering profession is going to be not just encouraged, but required to use some of these tools. You might as well learn that paradigm while in college, right? And along the way, when you look at the role of simulations, I had a chance to talk about talk about this to a couple of others.
Yeah.
Whichever be your profession, I think there is a simulation methodology or a simulation tool that is increasingly becoming not just relevant but required. Right. So let's talk about a little bit where those two worlds come together: the world of AI with the world of simulations for an engineer or a scientist.
Look, I think these models have absolutely transformed. These approaches have transformed certain things. Let's go back to my own field. If you think about protein folding, misfolding, and things like that. I mean, when I started out in the business, the whole question of solving the protein folding problem, this is going to take the age of the universe.
Yeah.
Now you've got AI models which are actually able to design new molecules. Yeah, I worked for a pharmaceutical company, for a couple of years.
Sure.
AstraZeneca, and there, your what you did was you just generated millions of these compounds, and you tested everything sort of, one by one on cells, whatever, to see where you get a hit. Now you're doing design by AI. Yeah? What you're saying is, okay, I'm going to take all of the information that I have, everything we know, even structurally. I mean, look, there's a reason why Demis Hassabis and Jumper got the Nobel Prize. I mean, the things that they have made possible are absolutely mind-boggling. So we absolutely have to also see the positive aspects of that. I mean, I had not thought possible that this would happen in my lifetime. But the fact that we are now able to take any given random sequence of amino acids and basically say, look, I can throw it into a system and I can get a reasonably plausible structure for this thing. This is just mind-boggling. And so I think there's lots of things here that are positive. Materials in general. You say, okay, now we can use artificial intelligence to design materials based on knowledge that we have generated in the past, but we have never been able to combinatorially actually create. But now you can do it in silico and then see, okay, not only can you do it in silico, you can end up saying, okay, this is probably manufacturable,
Yeah.
And then go out and check that out.
Sure.
That's amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Let's come back to this T-shaped engineer you had talked about earlier, or the Y-shaped engineer. How can a student design himself or herself to become a T-shaped individual? What can they do? What are some early things they can do in a 4-year college curriculum or maybe a postgraduate?
Look, I think most curricula, undergraduate curricula, give you some room in any case to take extra, outside your own core curriculum.
All curricula
all
do.
curricula do this. Yeah, use that wisely. Is the
Okay.
first thing I would say. Yeah, use that part wisely. Identify areas where you. I mean, I told you in my own case, I used it for archaeology and art history and things like that. It was fantastic. I'm very glad I did that because it really opened my eyes to many things. But you can do that in different ways. You're a computer scientist. You can use it for some biology things, for example. You're an electrical engineer. Do some mechie or whatever. Any. You can stay. You can stray very far afield from your own discipline, or you can stay a little bit closer.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, explore. Yeah. Management, finance, whatever. What you can do postgraduate is, of course, to switch fields. Yeah? I mean, when I got my PhD, I was in biophysics. Yeah? I had worked with a biochemist and then and a physicist. I actually chose to go to the Max Planck Institute, to a department of molecular biology.
As a physicist.
And I went, and it also turns out that this was also run by a man who was also amazing. He didn't have a PhD, he was an MD, Tom Joven, and who was also a polymath himself. Yeah? And Tom just gave me the freedom. But I went to a department of molecular biology, partly because I said, look, if I go to a physics place, I'll learn the physics, but I know some of that. If I go to here, I will learn something else. Yeah. And so you broaden your own horizons that way. I cannot complain.
Yeah.
It gave me opportunities which I would never have thought of.
Yeah. The message I am taking from that part is, the more disparate the courses look on your transcript, the more valuable you may be to a future employer.
You might. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's a balancing act, Mahesh. Yeah? I mean, because I remember when I had done many different things, and I remember when I was actually in the recruitment process, as a postdoc at some point, people, but what do you do? What is your expertise? You've done so many different things. What is your expertise? So, you have to find that balance over there. Yeah?
Sure.
I mean, I think I was a bit on the other extreme, one extreme, and somewhere there is a golden mean that you need to find.
Okay. Yeah. I think, also, let's talk to administrators, university administrators and senior faculty members who are involved in shaping the curricula at a high level. India is home to one of the world's largest university ecosystems, 1,200, 1,300 plus universities. Yeah. How can a university administrator, a vice chancellor or a director think about the future of education? What would be some takeaways from the way you've conducted, you've sort of built University of Twente in the last few years?
So I think one of the things that we tend to do is to say, you can obviously continue on the path that you have, which is classical disciplinary. But what I like to say, what I did at the Freie University, or at the University of Twente, is say, okay, what I want to try to do is to and what we as administrators and leaders want to try to do is to explore the boundaries, because I'm convinced that the innovation is happening at the boundaries of disciplines, at the boundaries of interactions. Yeah. So what we tended to do was, when I was saying, when we were funding things, you can fund a program within a faculty or so. But you say, look, we will only fund programs or give additional funding to things that are cross-faculty, cross-department. And the more, the merrier, right? So it's not to say that you don't come up with a good plan. You have to come up with a good plan. But it has to be multi-faculty, multi-department. So if you think, if I say, you want to start a new BTech program, I would say the challenge, what I would tell the director is, you know what, or the dean of academics, don't just start a new BTech program within mechanical or within applied mechanics or electrical or whatever. Make sure it's between two departments. But that's addressing something that students are interested in doing, because our students are also changing.
Yeah.
They're also saying, look, I want something else. That's one thing. But talk to your the external world. Look at who the what industry is looking for. I just saw something today on LinkedIn. Apparently the UK has just come up with a report on skills for the next 5-10 years. Yeah, it's a brand new office of skills or so, which has come up. So I haven't, I just seen it this morning. I haven't had a chance to download it. I want to take a look at that, because I think this is something that we are absolutely, facing. It's not just knowledge. It's also the skills that our young people need and that the workforce needs going forward. Yeah. And so we have a responsibility as educational institutions, not only to be teaching them the content, but also the skills and the competencies to be applying the content to relevant problems. Yeah. I think for a very long time, we have been focused primarily on the content itself, not so much on the competencies. Yeah, so
that's
the
a different
Dutch have,
paradigm of assessing students, assessing faculty, and in some sense, a new education system that's sort of being in the offing.
Yeah, so the Dutch have a system now that's called recognition and rewards, and which is, because classically what we were trying to do was basically we were just evaluating on a couple of parameters, research and education. And in many cases, certainly in the Dutch system, what was ending up happening was that we were evaluating more on research output and research, on funding input. Forgetting the fact that as a university, you're on the planet to educate young people. So the education is very important,
Yeah.
And I remember that. So what we're doing is we're really trying to sort of break that model open, saying, look, what are the things that are critical? Education, research, because in our world, education and research goes hand in hand.
Yeah, very much.
Your education is inspired by the research you do. The research is inspired by the education that you're giving, and societal relevance is important. Societal relevance is and I mean that very broadly. I mean, as an institute of technology or a technical university, you say, okay, what are we doing? How is it relevant for technology application areas? How is it relevant for society, in the sense that if we do medical technology, why are we doing it? Is it going to make a difference? And for the IIT Madras, or the IITs in India in any case, you have 1.4 billion people, you can make a difference on. The Netherlands, we're talking about 18 million people. It's a completely different scale.
Sure.
So I mean, here's the opportunity to really have impact. Yeah. I think those are things that we really need to think about. And this is what we are trying to do is very often is to say, we're not just looking at impact. And impact can be measured in many different ways. It is not just the number of publications that you have. It is not just the citations and so on. Obviously, you want to be scientifically viable. You want to be scientifically relevant. But again, if you think in terms of, I mean, I'll challenge you, or you can challenge the director also. You're doing a patent a day, yeah? Is that, and that's a good target to have, but is that the best target to have? Yeah? And this is a debate that you can have. Yeah? What do you go looking for? Yeah? Do you look for numbers, or do you look for impact?
Yeah.
It's a dialogue that we have very often also within our own university.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we have in the 65 years of my university, we have I think last count some 1,100, 1,200 spin outs and startups have started. But the point, of course, is okay, how many of them have really made it big? And what that's what you want to look at. And,
Sure.
And so those are things that we're also trying to, and we're not in the business of making money from those things, and so we have things that are either spin-outs of the company or they're startups that are founded by alumni or have some link to the university. And again, as incubation cell head, you've been involved in this.
Sure.
So, those are also things that we are thinking about. Booking.com that you've probably, it's a startup that came out of people from my university.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Just Eat Takeaway, $1 billion takeover recently, one of them came out of the university,
Wow.
So we have no stake in those things, but we have, what we are trying to do is to inculcate in our students that entrepreneurial spirit, saying, go off and do your thing. And if you think about that, you say, okay, then we've had impact. We've made some
absolutely.
impact.
Let's talk a little bit in closing about what I consider the last bastion of interdisciplinarity. I'll tell you in a minute what I mean. Math cracked physics 600 years ago, meaning math explained physics. Math explained biology for sure 200 years ago. And somewhere along that time frame with Mendel and even Bernoulli and such. Math explained chemistry. As soon as with the advent of quantum mechanics, chemistry today is nearly completely explainable from math. The last frontier is the social sciences. The image that you see there with the left and the right brain coming together. Where have you seen curricula that bring the left brain skills and the right brain skills into one sort of a college program? And what are the challenges there in your mind?
So I think the it's a very relevant point. Yeah? I think in the Netherlands, where we've had the beginnings of some sort of combinations of these sorts of things are in science and technology studies, where you combine, for example, the tech aspects and philosophy, ethics and philosophy of science. There you're seeing the marriage of the two. Yeah? Not so much maths, but science and technology, really. Yeah?
Okay.
There have been some university colleges, sort of liberal arts and sciences programs, which have more science-based focus. Yeah, we had at our university we had one where we stopped that program. We're stopping that program. The Amsterdam University College had a bit of more of a science focus. So I think there are programs that sort of bring those two together. But I think you're absolutely right that there is a lot more. There's a lot more mileage to be had by marrying the two things. I think what you see which has often been the case, that they have been treated as two very separate worlds.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. For partly also when I was saying, this tech optimism that we fall into as techies, there is, it's an illusion to think that our technology is just going to flourish by itself. Technology has to be accepted by people. And that means that you have to really make an effort to understand how your technology is making impact on people, how you communicate that to people. And you can only do that by actually embracing the social sciences and humanities as an equal partner. Yeah. I think the risk and the danger and I think the tendency that we have had in the past is at the end of the line, as a project is coming to a close, so we say, oh yeah, you know what? We have to go talk to the psychologist or the social scientist and bring him on board. That's too late.
Your COVID example starkly illustrates that one more time.
COVID example illustrates that starkly.
Yeah.
We need to have them on board in the design phase.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I would then say to an administrator or to the director is, you know what, when you're starting a new BTech program, make sure that the social scientists are on board from the beginning, because that's where our world is going. It is the combination of tech, social sciences, humanities to make impact on people's lives. You can't do that in a modular way where you say, okay, we'll bring the social sciences in at the end of the road. No. And again, you don't have to say, I'm going to do everything here in my own, in-house. No, you can collaborate with the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's perfectly okay. Yeah. Seek those collaborations. I think that's very important. One of the things that we're doing is together with the Freie Universität in Amsterdam, we do programs together. And there we're trying to see if we can't marry our respective expertises to create something that is more than the sum of the parts.
Wonderful. As someone who has led transformation in multiple universities, your closing thoughts for both administrators and students out there?
This is a time of unprecedented change, I think, for our sector, for students, administrators as well. I think the challenge for all of us is going to be to retain equilibrium, if you will, as we sort of navigate these choppy waters. I mean, we're there are many different things. You see it happening in the world around us, where there is and luckily not so much here. There's in the US, I'm seeing it. I mean, the science is being broken down, and the thing that I tell politicians or people, it's very easy to break something down, that we've built. But if you turn around and change your mind and ask me to rebuild this, it's going to take me 10, 15 years. Yeah. So be very careful about what you're asking for, and about trying to shut things down or break things down. Certainly for me, in my context, the thing is navigating politics, navigating budget cuts and so on, but keeping the lodestar of what is it, why are we on the planet? We're on the planet to educate young people, to make them resilient, to make them fit for purpose, if you will, for the jobs and for the challenges of the future. And that's what I keep coming back to, saying, okay, if we have to tweak our institution, what does that mean? Yeah. And in your case, I guess, it's sort of thing, how do you contribute to the nation? How do you contribute to a Viksit Bharat? How do you go to, what does that mean? Yeah. And how do you, and what role do you take in that? So I think our work is not done and will never be done. And that is actually the wonders of being in this business is that it is continuously changing, and we have to continuously adapt to it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this fascinating conversation that touched upon multiple topics, Vinod. I'm sure we'll have to do a part 2 at some future point of time.
Gladly. Thank you so very much for having me here.
My pleasure. This has been another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. Until we meet again, be well, do good, and keep in touch. Goodbye.